Ladies and gentlemen, since independence, most Luos have depended on the Odingas for political instruction and in some cases even cultural instruction. I use the word most of Luos because before Raila Odinga, during the Oginga Odinga's time, a part of the Luo Nation was not quite into the Odinga leadership, was not quite under the Odinga leadership. There were people in South Nyanza, for instance, who were very proud members of the ruling party, KANU then. But then with Raila Odinga, he managed to bring together both South Nyanza and Central Nyanza. South Nyanza, for those of you who don't know, is Migori, Homa Bay, and of course Kisii. And then Central Nyanza is just Kisumu and Siaya. And Raila Odinga managed to bring them together. And since then, Luos have depended on Raila Odinga for political instruction way forward, and even in some cases on cultural moves on what to do culturally. Raila Odinga was more influential than the Luo elders combined, and of course, more powerful than all Luo political leaders combined. It is in him that majority of Luos expected a way forward. Luos have, majority of them, supported Raila Odinga a record 5 times. He vied first time in 1997, and the most votes he got was from Luo land. And even when he vied again in 2007, 10 years later, Raila Odinga got the most solid support from Luo land. Of course, the same was the case in 2013, 2017, and 2022. The other times Raila Odinga contested for presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, the question that comes to mind, without Raila, what are Luos supposed to do? I already did a video about the options Luos have, even though Raila was still alive. And those options, ladies and gentlemen, they don't change. Because those of you who follow politics keenly know very well that Raila Odinga had made his stance. Raila Odinga went to great lengths to explain why he chose to work with William Ruto. His brother Oburu, to quote him, said, "There is no government they have worked with that has been beneficial to the Luo community than that of William Ruto." And they have insisted that working with William Ruto is a decision they don't regret. Raila Odinga was explaining why he chose to work with William Ruto, and where he says he doesn't regret, even though people were calling him traitor and writing newspaper. He said you'll just look at those screaming headlines and laugh. So he had already made his decision. I want you to understand, there are people who are claiming that Raila Odinga never endorsed William Ruto. There's a rule I shared with you on this platform, ladies and gentlemen. Anytime you listen to political analysis, ask yourself, does it make sense? Let's take this example. Raila Odinga said explicitly that the agreement, the working together between UDA and ODM was to stay on until 2027. I want to ask you, does it make sense to support Kenya Kwanza government till 2027, then pull out in 2027 of all the years and start criticizing it and vie? Does it make sense? If you know politics, you know that does not make sense. You know very well that if you are to do politics, if you are to vie, you are supposed to have started by 2024 or even 2023. to prepare for election of 2027. But to wait until 2027, maybe around June, to withdraw, there will be no time to even prepare for an election, ladies and gentlemen. So Raila Odinga had made it very clear that he supports William Ruto for 2027, that he would not be vying. And if you doubt that, if you feel like I am now starting to create things that Raila Odinga didn't say, Raila Odinga said the following, that 2027 will be a point where they, Raila Odinga, speaking in front of Ruto, will tell Kenyans what they have achieved. And then the opposition will also tell Kenyans their plan, and Kenyans will pick. And he said, I am confident that we will continue past 2027. That is Raila Odinga. It's a video that you can find easily. The point is, even though Raila Odinga had explicitly shown that he is supporting William Ruto, there are those who are still waiting for the exact words. They were waiting for Raila Odinga to say that in 2027, we will be supporting William Ruto. Especially some members of the Luo Nation. They were still waiting for that. And so these are people who didn't like the broad-based government. And they were waiting for Raila Odinga to tell them otherwise. So when Raila Odinga made remarks like, who said ODM will not be fielding a candidate, these people will be over the moon. They will be saying, I told you, one term is real. Raila Odinga is not going to support Ruto. Which brings us to, what options do Luos have? Considering that some of them are insisting that Raila Odinga never explicitly endorsed William Ruto. I am saying so because I have told you, Raila Odinga has been the one giving the Luo a way forward politically. So if he tells them that it is time to support Uhuru Kenyatta, then Uhuru Kenyatta turns from a murderer they hate to a personal friend, somebody who has been there for the Luo community. That is how influential Raila Odinga is. So what should Luos do? That is what I want to walk you through briefly. They have 3 options. And if you are finding value in our videos, consider subscribing and liking this video. Luos have 3 options. They are the same options I shared before. They don't change. Option number 1 is to remain where Raila Odinga left them. Raila Odinga left Luos in broad-based government, working with William Ruto. I told you Raila Odinga literally handed over his support base to William Ruto. Even when William Ruto was moving in Nairobi, Raila Odinga had ordered his MPs to work with Ruto. He didn't bother to go with him. He handed over his support base to William Ruto. So, as Opio and I explained yesterday, Luos were left in broad-based government, and Luos were supposed to support William Ruto's re-election and then bargain for something come 2032. That is one option. They can say, Raila Odinga, Baba, the person we listen to, went and worked with Ruto and defended his decision. He said not once, not twice, but several times that the decision to work with Ruto was the best for not just Kenya, but his community. So his community can decide to take his word for it and remain, work with Ruto, ensure Ruto is re-elected, and look into an arrangement of how a Luo becomes president come 2032. That is option number 1. Option number 2, ladies and gentlemen, is where Luos decide to field a candidate, a presidential candidate. That is another option. They can say, no, we were just working with Ruto because Raila ordered so. Now that Raila is no more, it is time we do our own things. And as far as we are concerned, we are going to field a candidate come 2027. Like I told you, to win the presidency, you need 2 of these 3 communities to support you. You need Luos, Kalenjins, and Kikuyus. 2 of them, at least 2 of them, must support you to win the presidency. If Luos fielded a candidate into 2027, are you sure the Kikuyus are going to support them? Because Kalenjins have their son going for re-election, so they are not available. So will Luos get the Kikuyus to support whoever it is that they are going to field? Maybe they will, but chances are very unlikely. So that is an option they have. They can decide to field a candidate. Whoever that candidate will be, they can decide to field a candidate and support that candidate with the hope that Luos get the presidency come 2027. Not impossible, but a very tall order. Very difficult to achieve. Because the only Luo who had presidential aura, the one who had support across, is none other than Raila Odinga. I can challenge you to give me a list of Luos who you believe can start campaigning today, and by 2027 they are popular enough to be elected president against William Ruto or against Kalonzo Musyoka. Is not impossible, but is a tall order. Ladies and gentlemen, the other option that Luos have is to join the so-called united opposition. Luos can say, and this is a very convenient argument, Luos can say, Kalonzo Musyoka, because going to support Rigathi directly might not work. So they might hide behind Kalonzo Musyoka. But of course, you know that Kalonzo Musyoka is not calling the shots. If you join the so-called united opposition, you are literally joining Rigathi Gachagua. And that is the reality of politics. And nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with joining Rigathi Gachagua as a Luo. This is a democracy. So you can't do that. So Luos, like I was saying, can argue that Kalonzo Musyoka stood with Raila several times. And it is time we Luos paid him back for standing with Raila. The expectation is that Luos will want a running mate. Or they may just be like, we are just part of these people who want William Ruto to be one term. So we don't care whether we are getting a running mate or not. We are just joining Rigathi Gachagua, and we join the bandwagon and make sure William Ruto goes home. That is a choice they can make. However, for the community, that has no benefit. And let me explain. If the community is looking forward to getting something in return, maybe the presidency, then remember Kalonzo will go for 2 terms if he was to win. So that means Kalonzo would have gone up to 2037. And in whatever arrangement, Kalonzo is likely to have a running mate who is not a Luo. So either they can convince Matiang'i to be Kalonzo's running mate, or Kalonzo will be given a Kikuyu running mate to motivate Kikuyus to vote for Kalonzo Musyoka. I told you before, if the Murima is not getting something, it doesn't matter how much they are talking about you or praising you. When it comes to turnout, they barely turn out. I saw that firsthand in 2022, where they were like Ruto, Damu, and everything. Yet on the day of turnout, it was so pathetic that MPs from Mount Kenya were now urged to go and mobilize people to turn out. In some stations in Kirinyaga, nobody was there until 10 a.m. There is no one. So they were not motivated. And even when, after they were mobilized, the turnout was still 65%, which is not what you get from Mount Kenya. For Uhuru Kenyatta, they turned out 87%. So, ladies and gentlemen, for them to be motivated to turn out and vote for Kalonzo Musyoka, they have to be given something, maybe a deputy president. If that is the case, then by 2037, when Kalonzo is retiring, that particular deputy president will be vying for presidency. And that means Luos are not getting anything until maybe 2050. That is a long time, but it is a choice. I just want to repeat, Luos have three choices. Stick with Ruto where Raila left them. Say no, we don't want Ruto. It is our time. Field the candidate in 2027. Or say no, our own goal, our main goal, the only thing we want is to make sure William Ruto is one term and join Rigathi Gachagua. Whichever decision they make, there are advantages and disadvantages, like I've said. But if you asked me, the best option for Luos moving forward is to stay where Raila Odinga left them. And let me back this with some facts. I have told you they can field a candidate. That candidate is likely to fail. I have told you they can join Rigathi Gachagua. Of course, chances are that if they do, William Ruto might not get re-elected. But also, a Luo is not going to be in the picture for the next 20 years. So it doesn't work for them. But if they remain with William Ruto and they play a big role in getting William Ruto re-elected, chances are Luos might get even a running mate into 2027. I'm just saying. And if they did, come 2032, when William Ruto is retiring, this particular running mate would have the support of the incumbent president. And not just any incumbent, an incumbent who has never lost an election. A very aggressive incumbent. And two, somebody who keeps his word. Politically speaking, hate William Ruto or love him, he keeps his political promises. That is why William Ruto has friends who are willing to go through hell to support him. He keeps his word. To quote an insider, it is said that Raila said that of all the people he have had handshakes with, William Ruto is the only one who did not have anything under the table. Everything was on the table. He came with everything on the table. He declared everything. He's a man of his word. And so if Luos were to stand with him, if he told them he would do something for them, then he will eventually do something for them. But that is just me. It's a democracy we live in. So chances are there may be divisions here and there. There are people who are going to try their level best and, of course, convince Luos otherwise. And won't be surprised, because even when Raila was alive, there were people who were still saying that working with William Ruto, which was Raila's decision, was a wrong move. So these people are going to be emboldened now that Raila is not there. They will likely say that Raila Odinga did not endorse Ruto explicitly, and for that reason, we need to chart our own political path. Well and good, they can do that. But chances are, like I said, they may not win. They may not benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what I wanted to tell you. Just as a recap, here are the three options, political options, Luos have moving forward. 1, remain where Raila Odinga left you. That is working with William Ruto into 2027. 2, field a candidate. Say it is your time to field a candidate into 2027. The problem with that is that while it is not impossible to win, it is a tall order. Because currently, we may not have a Luo that already has that national support enough to compete against William Ruto or Kalonzo Musyoka, if, let's say, they settle on Kalonzo Musyoka. 3 is to say our desire is the same as that of the Kikuyu community. We want to punish William Ruto. Now, remember, Kikuyu are punishing William Ruto for bringing Luos into government. So you can join them and say, well, it makes sense. We can join you and together make sure Ruto is a one-term. Possible. Chances are that William Ruto may be one-term if Luos did that. The problem is, what do Luos get in return? Maybe up to 2050, there will be nothing for the Luo community. That is what I wanted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. If you found value in this video, let me know in the comment section. And of course, if you have not subscribed to this channel, take a second and subscribe and like this video and share it with your friends. Otherwise, if you want to know why Raila Odinga's death is a big blow to everyone, watch this video.